Imagine opening the door to your own home and feeling like a stranger. You walk into familiar rooms, you hear the same voices, but something cracks beneath the surface of your routine. The smile you force, the hello you offer, the stories you listen to, each one layered with hesitance. Have you ever felt like you're playing a part instead of living your life? Marriage isn't supposed to be an endless theater performance, but for you, some days feel like a silent masquerade. The tension in your chest isn't just frustration. It's the slow, suffocating suspicion that you're living a lie, one of comfort, another of fear, both of survival. Your mind flickers between psychology and instinct. Your habits are rituals you cannot explain, only perform. You tell yourself, it's just a phase. Tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow arrives identical, as if someone pressed repeat on your reality. The ache of rejection from your spouse, real or imagined, lies heavy in your subconscious. You question what went wrong, where trust buckled, when communication fell apart. You crave clarity, but every answer feels slippery, twisted by emotion and doubt. You wonder if this pain is universal. Psychologists call it emotional cheating, not the affair of bodies, but the betrayal of hearts. It isn't about adultery, not yet. It's the slow drift of attention, the secrets you keep, the words you swallow when the air thickens. Your spouse sits across the table, talking about the day, yet the distance between you is a canyon, measured not in meters, but in absence and confusion. You look at your hands, your wedding band still there, a silent reminder of promises made aloud and hesitations never voiced. Habit takes hold, nod, respond, pretend. You wonder what attraction means in this context. Is it an obligation? Is your desire a shadow that moves behind closed doors, or a light that exposes every lie you tell yourself? Science says relationships are containers for emotion, but yours leaks with every forced smile. You crave confidence, to speak, to breathe, to be, but you clutch fear instead. Truth feels dangerous, but living a lie is deadly. How did your thinking become your enemy, twisting normal stress into chronic suspicion? Are you fighting the world, or just yourself? The pain morphs. You start seeing every word as a code, every silence as accusation. Misunderstanding feeds anxiety, breeding a new kind of isolation, quiet, sophisticated, invisible to outsiders. You want understanding, yet you repel connection by refusing honesty. Your spouse senses your withdrawal, responds with their own, defensive, wary. The cycle begins, relentless, spinning through the days. You examine your relationship as if it's a crime scene, looking for evidence of infidelity when what's missing is intimacy. Has someone cheated? Or has everyone just stopped risking vulnerability? Psychology models call this stonewalling, when conversation becomes superficial, when emotions hide behind walls, when sexual intimacy is replaced by frustrated silence. You pray for a breakthrough, but all you get is more surface and less soul. Your marriage is meant to be a place of safety, yet it feels like a chessboard, each move calculated, each thought monitored for weakness. Trust becomes currency, but you're bankrupt. Every text, every call, every sidelong glance carries weight. You chase answers. You research. You scroll through articles, psychology podcasts, forums full of strangers with identical pain. Is it your fault? Is it theirs? You dissect your habits, your spouse's reactions, the minute details of your everyday life. The brutal truth: nobody wants to admit they're living a lie. Sometimes it's easier to label yourself a victim, to highlight their flaws, their betrayals, their lack of communication. But you're here too, hiding truths, swallowing emotion, pretending at confidence. You fear divorce, not just for its disruption, but for what it announces to the world: failure, loss, exposure. So you craft a life of emotional adultery, sidestepping reality in favor of routine. You shut down your needs. You suffocate desire. You forget what happiness felt like. You master denial and call it love. Every unresolved conflict leaves a scar. Every awkward silence carves distance into familiarity. Your relationship becomes choreography, the steps memorized but the meaning lost. Sometimes you dream about liberation, a life without deception, a marriage without games. But you wonder if courage is possible when fear has become your language. Science says transformation is possible, but it requires honesty. You must unlearn habits, challenge your thinking, expose your rawest emotions. You need to ask yourself impossible questions. Why do you hide? Why do you twist your genuine longing into polite avoidance? You weren't made for perpetual anxiety, for clutching at sense while losing soul. You crave trust, not as a prize given by a perfect spouse, but as an offering, yours, theirs, ours. If marriage is a mirror, what do you see reflected? A lie in progress, or a person on the edge of awakening? You sit with the weight of doubt. The remnants of last night's arguments echo between your ribs, a staccato rhythm that drowns out forgiveness. Your spouse barely looks your way, and you mistake their distraction for contempt. The psychology is sinister. Confirmation bias locks your mind on proof of rejection, not evidence of love. You scan memory for happiness and uncover mostly friction. You wonder, is this marriage, or is this mutually assured survival? Emotions thicken, logic thins. You keep tabs, invent stories, imagine conversations that never happened. Your confidence is chipped, but you paint over it with indifference. Communication is the ultimate casualty. You do not ask, you do not say, you do not tell. Understanding dissolves, replaced by surmise and suspicion. Your own habits betray you. The ritual morning coffee, the rehearsed goodnight, the mechanical I'm fine all serve one function: preservation. You preserve the image, not the heat, of a marriage. Trust struggles for breath, suffocated under layers of self-doubt and emotional distance. Is this intimacy, or is this withdrawal masquerading as patience? Look closely. What do you crave when desire vanishes? Affection, sure, but deeper still, you want to matter. Attraction shrinks under scrutiny, and all you feel is the loss of harmony, loss of spontaneous touch, loss of certainty. You recall the first days, the heat, the promise, the thrill. Now, every gesture is weighed, measured by science and philosophy, never by wild feeling. You study your spouse across the room and wonder if they feel the same vacancy. Do they sense your inner conflict, the quiet panic every time you catch their eyes searching for something you can't give? Are you their habit, or are you still their home? Adultery looms in imagination before it ever appears in flesh, a secret possibility hanging in the background, whispered in insecurity, birthed by misunderstanding. You cling to the idea that honesty will save you, but honesty is the enemy of denial. To admit the lie is to risk everything: the family, the marriage, the illusion. But to keep lying is to risk yourself, your clarity, your soul. You face the paradox with trembling hands. Speak and maybe destroy, or keep silent and surely perish. Patterns emerge, as guaranteed as the rising sun. You notice every emotional withdrawal, every new habit adopted overnight, closing doors, scrolling past. You feel psychological triggers, the sense of urgency rising every time your spouse texts late, lingers too long, laughs at something outside your reach. Your mind invents stories faster than truth can provide comfort. Infidelity is not just the body, it's an emotional betrayal, a turning away from shared vulnerability. You are haunted by the risks: abandonment, misunderstanding, loss. The fear of divorce is a daily ache, the dread hung unspoken over breakfast toast, between sighs in the hallway. You analyze your communication, searching for cracks, for moments where words could have stitched instead of split. You want to rebuild confidence, but you doubt your own ability to transform fear into power. Every conflict becomes a test of your thinking, your habits, your resilience. Are you strong enough to confront what you've hidden from yourself? Or will you keep deferring the reckoning, holding out hope that the lie will magically evolve into truth? Freedom asks for honesty. Are you ready, or are you still pretending? It hurts to recognize yourself in the mirror. The face is familiar, but the story behind the eyes is new. You remember the old patterns of attraction, the games of pursuit and retreat. Now all communication is colored by suspicion, every compliment is dissected, every silence is loaded. Your marriage is a battlefield, no longer a sanctuary. Emotions are stored up and spent like currency, every act of kindness feels transactional. You crave understanding, but your own thoughts sabotage every attempt at closeness. This self-sabotage is clinical in its precision, rooted deep in habits, shaped by years of conditioning, culture, and unspoken wounds. Psychology says we resist change because the pain of truth is greater than the comfort of certainty. But what is certain in your relationship? Trust is more fragile than you imagined. Intimacy flickers, gone in a moment of anxiety. Yet underneath, a hunger stirs, an urge to reclaim confidence, communication, even joy. You realize, the greatest infidelity is not of the body, but of the mind, when you abandon the possibility of togetherness for the safety of isolation. Will you confess, or will you retreat? The road to liberation is paved with confessions. Not just to your spouse, but to yourself. You revisit the broken places in your marriage, the moments when you chose quiet instead of courage, detachment instead of connection. You name the emotions: frustration, resentment, longing, dread. You begin to distinguish your habits, not as fate, but as choices repeated until they feel like destiny. Science and street wisdom both agree, transformation starts with awareness. The journey is not easy, pain sharpens with each realization, resistance flares as you struggle with the fear of losing comfort. Inner strength doesn't miraculously appear. It's sculpted, carved out of vulnerability. To heal, you must speak honestly. You must listen with curiosity, not accusation. You must offer understanding, even when you crave justice. Your relationship is still alive, pulsing beneath the surface. All it asks is for truth to replace routine, for courage to replace habit. If you're living a lie, you have already lost harmony. But if you choose truth, you may yet find yourself and, possibly, each other. You start to notice the small shifts when you allow honesty in. Your spouse looks at you differently, curiosity flickers behind their guarded gaze. You stop rehearsing answers. You begin questioning together, instead of interrogating apart. You feel the tension, the risk, the exposure. Every real conversation opens wounds and offers healing, all at once. You share your fears, the ache for attraction, the silent terror of emotional cheating. They share theirs: rejection, uncertainty, the burden of being misunderstood. There is relief in truth, even when it stings. Communication finds a new cadence, not always pleasant, but electric with possibility. You realize how badly you've wanted to be seen, not just loved. For the first time, you let your partner see your insecurity, your thinking mistakes, your self-sabotage. Psychology calls this the beginning of repair, a slow rebuilding of trust, the first step away from the divorce that lives in your nightmares. It's fragile, but it's alive. You relearn your spouse, discover attraction in authenticity, and recognize that the lie was never worth the safety it promised. Habits become the battleground for change. You catch yourself reaching for old scripts: denial, avoidance, the easy escape in technology or distraction. You realize the ways you used routine to suffocate emotion and numb pain. Liberation is not just tearing down walls, it's choosing not to rebuild them, even on days when you crave security over connection. Your emotional language grows, no longer just survival, but the beginnings of genuine understanding. You practice saying hard things gently. You ask for confidence, and bit by bit, you receive it. Your relationship starts to shift. Attraction rekindles, not out of desperation, but out of shared vulnerability. Sometimes you stumble, falling back into misunderstanding, snapping at old triggers. But each time, you return, with honesty as your compass, not pride. Marriage is now a dialogue, not a chess match. Infidelity ceases to be a lurking threat and becomes a topic you can actually face together. You see trust as a living thing, fragile, resilient, needing constant care. Understanding replaces suspicion, anxiety loosens its grip. You feel real, at last. The pain isn't gone, but it's changed. You confront your biggest fears, loss, rejection, loneliness, not by avoidance, but by holding them up to the light. Your spouse does the same, slowly, awkwardly, sometimes angrily. You wonder how many years you wasted doubting instead of demanding clarity. You see how much of your suffering was habit, how many days fear dictated your thinking. Science offers absolution, psychology says we are wired for connection, but programmed by history for defense. Now you rewrite the code. You recognize the subtle seductions of self-sabotage and laugh. You track your progress, marking each genuine conversation, each small act of confidence, each night spent in honest partnership rather than staged performance. The word divorce is still there, a warning, not a prophecy. But now, it's accompanied by growth and change. Your emotional cheating stops, not because you conquer temptation, but because you no longer need a fantasy to endure reality. Marriage becomes the place where you confront everything, heal anything, and risk losing nothing but the lie. Liberation deepens, a transformation from anxious calculation to straightforward courage. Infidelity, emotional or physical, is no longer the secret fear you dare not name. You can say, I was lonely, and hear, me too. You find confidence not in perfection, but in your willingness to be flawed, to expose your raw edges. You examine attraction anew, not as ritual, but as electric possibility. Your habits reshape, active listening, brave speech, mindful action. Communication flowers in places where before there was only drought. No longer do you measure your marriage in nights slept apart or angry silences. Now, every misunderstanding is an opportunity, a reminder of your humanity. You learn the difference between emotional avoidance and loving confrontation. Divorce loses its power as a threat, in its place stands the promise of choice, always open, never forced. Trust regrows, slowly, daily, through shared effort. You look at your spouse and see not an enemy, not a stranger, but another person making the same journey toward clarity. You are both, at last, choosing truth over comfort. You understand how much power you wield. Your psychology, your thinking, your habits, all can either destroy or rebuild your marriage. You are not at the mercy of circumstance, you are the architect of your own liberation. You stop fearing emotional cheating and start focusing on emotional connection. You use conflict as fuel, honesty as the blueprint. The pain is now a teacher, not a jailer. You build confidence out of transparency, attraction out of courage, trust out of persistent effort. You do not ignore the possibility of loss. The specter of divorce is always real, but it ceases to rule your emotional climate. You feel stronger, healthier, more alive. You learn to see your spouse not as a solution to your pain, but as a partner in the search for meaning. Marriage transforms from a performance into a practice, from a shelter from truth into the birthplace of it. The old days of living a lie are gone, if you dare let them go. Everything changes, not because you force it, but because you choose it, again and again. You realize that happiness is not given, it's forged in the fires of honest struggle. Now the fear of being misunderstood becomes your motivation to truly listen. No more rehearsed replies, no more defenses masked as logic. You start to see your spouse's perspective, how their pain mirrors yours, how their silence may be a plea for safety, not a verdict of indifference. Psychology says empathy rewires the mind, and you feel it, the subtle shift from argument to embrace, from suspicion to curiosity. The old emotional habits shrink under new routines, speaking before retreating, reaching before recoiling, owning your faults without shame. You find your confidence in the rawness of imperfection. Every intimate moment, whether heated or solemn, is now colored by the freedom to be unclear, to risk misunderstanding in pursuit of real understanding. You become a student of your relationship, observing not to criticize, but to comprehend. Attraction returns, not as a secret longing, but as an open invitation to mutual discovery. You let go of the hypervigilance that once defined your marriage, and in its absence, fresh trust blooms. You realize marriage is less about avoiding discomfort and more about seeking truth, together. With every honest exchange, you face paths that diverged long ago. One path was avoidance, you know its cost, chronic anxiety, shriveled intimacy, the endless threat of separation. The other path, the one you now take, is recognition, the willingness to admit your role in pain, your complicity in misunderstanding. Divorce is no longer inevitable, but neither is blind optimism. You learn to value the tension, the dissonance between needs and reality, because it keeps you awake, keeps you striving. You strip away the thin layers of performance that used to encase your family life. Children, if you have them, notice the difference: less shouting, more talking, fewer silent meals. You construct a marriage, piece by honest piece, where communication replaces accusation and vulnerability becomes tradition. The word cheating fades from your mental vocabulary, overtaken by sharing and exploring. Confidence surges, not from guarantees, but from the experience of real connection. You become a practitioner of emotional truth, a quiet rebel against inherited patterns and psychological traps. The more real you become, the more real your relationship is. Science supports this: couples who confront pain, who name it aloud, are less likely to fracture. But street wisdom adds a layer: happiness isn't passive, it's carved from the bones of disappointment and rebuilt stronger each time. You discuss old wounds frankly, neither minimizing nor dramatizing. You allow yourself not only to grieve, but to dream with your spouse again. Attraction becomes a conscious choice, rekindled with every honest word and gentle acceptance. You realize marriage is a living organism, tender, adaptive, sometimes fierce. You confront the urge to self-sabotage, to revert to old habits, and you sometimes falter. But now you catch yourself in the act and offer kindness instead of contempt. You understand your spouse's triggers, you see your own as doors, not traps. Family becomes a safer space, trust a daily exercise, and misunderstanding a map for growth rather than a verdict on character. You accept the messiness, knowing only the truth can sustain the transformation you now choose. There are days when doubt rushes back in, when the old fear of rejection or betrayal returns, shadowing even the brightest moments. But you do not retreat into the lie anymore. You speak your uncertainties, you let yourself be seen at your most vulnerable. You witness your spouse's struggle and no longer demand perfection or hide your pain. Self-awareness grows sharp, you notice the subtle voice that tempts you to emotional exile to avoid conflict. But now you reach instead of run, engage instead of escape. Communication, once a battlefield, is now a bridge, even when shaky, even when threatened by storms. Infidelity feels less like an external force and more like a warning light, something to be addressed openly, not feared in silence. You understand that every family hides ghosts, you no longer let them dictate the present. The anxiety that once consumed you becomes your signal, a prompt to get curious, not to retreat. You carry strength in your honesty, and even rejection loses its poison in the light of shared truth. This is your finale. You stand at the crossroads, no longer bound by habits of deceit, no longer ruled by fear of divorce or infidelity. You choose to live without shadow, naming your pain, loving in full view. You realize that marriage isn't a shelter from the truth, it's a forge for it. You are the architect of your happiness, the co-creator of your family's emotional legacy. Confidence flows from transparency, desire from authenticity, trust from relentless honesty. You redefine intimacy as the act of facing everything together. You are not living a lie. You are living the transformation. Let the truth become your home. Rebirth begins when the lie ends.